Okay, you guys, so I'm trying to get to the bottom of what is really going on with Nicki Minaj right now, because this situation is not just messy, it's expensive, it's public, and it has real consequences attached to it. Nicki Minaj is reportedly facing a hard deadline to pay a $503,000 lawsuit judgment, and if that money is not paid by later this week, she could be looking at serious consequences, including the risk of liens or action connected to her $20 million California mansion. This isn't rap beef, this isn't Twitter fingers. This is real-life court business, and it's attached to her husband and a situation that keeps dragging her name into the headlines. Now let's get into the receipts, because this didn't just come out of nowhere. According to court filings that have been circulating, the lawsuit stems from an incident involving Nicki Minaj's husband and her former bodyguard. The bodyguard filed a civil lawsuit claiming that he was assaulted during a disagreement while working for Nicki. The blind item reads like this was not some random altercation, but something that allegedly escalated to the point where legal action became unavoidable. The court ultimately ruled in favor of the bodyguard, issuing a judgment totaling just over $500,000, and now the clock is ticking for payment. Here's where things get uncomfortable for Nicki as a brand. Let's be real, Nicki Minaj is not broke. This is a woman who has made tens of millions of dollars off music, touring, endorsements, and business ventures. So when fans hear that she's being given a deadline to pay $503,000, the immediate question becomes, why hasn't this already been handled? That's not no light work for regular people, but for someone at Nicki's level, this should have been wrapped up quietly a long time ago. The fact that it's even reached this stage makes people wonder what's really going on behind the scenes. What really makes this story heavier is that it's not even about something Nicki herself did directly, but once again, her name is attached to her husband's actions. If this is true, it's very concerning how often Nicki ends up having to publicly defend, financially support, or clean up situations tied to him. Over the years, fans have watched her go from being fiercely protective to openly combative anytime criticism comes her way, and situations like this don't help her public image at all. It really makes you wonder how much of this stress is self-inflicted. Now, let's talk about that mansion, because that's what has everybody gagging. Reports say Nicki's $20 million California home could be at risk if this judgment isn't satisfied. No, the house isn't being snatched tomorrow morning, but legal pressure, like liens and enforcement actions, are very real tools courts use when judgments go unpaid. And the optics of a rap superstar potentially dealing with legal action tied to her property? That's not a good look, especially when critics already feel like her personal life overshadows her artistry. Fans are split right now. On one side, you have the barbs saying this is being blown out of proportion, that Nicki is targeted, and that people are just waiting for her downfall. On the other side, you have people saying accountability is accountability, and money doesn't make you immune from consequences. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Do you think Nicki is being unfairly dragged, or do you think this is what happens when you ignore red flags for too long? Another layer that people are talking about is how this keeps Nicki in a defensive posture instead of a celebratory one. Anytime she drops music, goes live, or trends, there's always some legal or personal issue lurking in the background. Let's be real, that kind of constant pressure can wear on anybody. Instead of headlines about her legacy, her influence, or her chart success, we're talking about court deadlines and lawsuits. That's not how icons are supposed to be moving at this stage of their careers. What's also interesting is the silence. Nicki has not directly addressed the judgment publicly in detail, and that silence is loud. When celebrities don't speak, it usually means lawyers are heavily involved, and everything is being calculated word for word. That tells me this situation is serious enough that she can't just tweet her way out of it or rally her fan base to change the narrative. Courts don't care about stan culture, and that's a reality a lot of celebrities eventually face. At the end of the day, this situation highlights a bigger issue. When you tie your brand, your money, and your legacy to someone else's behavior, you're signing up for whatever comes with that. Nicki Minaj didn't get famous overnight, and she didn't build her empire by being careless. So watching her repeatedly have to answer for situations like this feels frustrating for fans who want to see her win without all the extra baggage. Now, picking up from where we left off, the reality is this lawsuit situation puts Nicki Minaj at a crossroads because the court doesn't care about status, legacy, or fan loyalty. A judgment is a judgment, period. Once a court orders payment, it's no longer about opinions or narratives. It's about compliance. And when you hear that there's a deadline attached to it, that's the system basically saying, we've already heard enough. Pay up or face consequences. That's not no light work, especially when property and assets start entering the conversation. What really has people talking is how this keeps reinforcing the same cycle around Nicki's personal life. Every few years, there's another situation tied to her husband that ends up costing her financially, reputationally, or emotionally. Let's be real. When you're married, your lives are legally and financially intertwined whether fans like it or not. So even if she wasn't directly involved in the alleged incident, the fallout still lands at her doorstep. And that's where sympathy for Nicki starts running thin with the general public. Industry folks are quietly saying this is the kind of situation that makes brands nervous. Companies don't like unpredictability. They don't like lawsuits. They don't like stories involving assault claims and unpaid judgments floating around the headlines. Even if Nicki can afford the payout 10 times over, the noise alone can affect opportunities. It really makes you wonder how many doors quietly close when controversies like this keep piling up, even for someone as established as her. Another thing people aren't saying out loud enough is how unnecessary this all feels. This wasn't a massive corporate lawsuit. This wasn't a record label dispute. This was a bodyguard doing his job, an altercation allegedly happening, and now $500,000 is owed. Situations like this should have been settled quickly and discreetly. Dragging it out to the point where deadlines and mansions are being mentioned just makes it worse for everyone involved. Fans also need to understand that courts move differently than social media. You can trend all day, you can go live, you can drag bloggers, but none of that pauses a legal clock. If payment isn't made, enforcement actions can happen fast. Liens, wage garnishments tied to businesses, property complications, this is how the system applies pressure. And no, it doesn't mean she's being targeted, it means she lost a civil case and now has to satisfy the ruling like anybody else. What's wild is how this story distracts from Nicki's actual accomplishments. She should be in conversations about longevity, influence, and cementing her place in music history. Instead, we're talking about court judgments and deadlines. That's the part that feels self-sabotaging. At some point, protecting your peace has to outweigh protecting people who keep bringing chaos into your life. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Do you feel like Nicki is standing by her husband no matter the cost? Or do you think this is a situation where loyalty is doing more harm than good? And be honest, do you think this would even be happening if roles were reversed and she wasn't the breadwinner? But moving on to the bigger picture, okay, you guys, so this could also signal a shift in how the public engages Nicki moving forward. There's a difference between controversy that fuels interest and controversy that exhausts people. This one feels like the latter. Even some longtime supporters are saying they just want peace for her at this point, not another headline tied to legal drama. If Nicki pays the judgment and this goes away, it'll be a lesson learned, hopefully. If she doesn't and things escalate, the optics are going to get uglier fast. Either way, this situation didn't need to reach this level, and that's the most frustrating part. This was avoidable.